This is the Tree of Life, Season 23, Chapter 7. In this episode, we will be talking about the hierarchy of objectives and the tautological flow of consciousness from vessel to vessel. We talked about how once an objective-oriented action is acquiesced to, if it is not completed due to intervention by some observer from within time parsimony, the result is a redirection in the flow of consciousness from vessel to vessel. The idea was, this intervention is hierarchical, because it follows from preferential expectation matching, reversing priority in reverse substitution temporarily. In the last episode, we talked about how the intervention of an observer representing time parsimony, in the process of execution of a goal-oriented action, represents a hierarchy of objectives. The idea was that the intervener along the path of time parsimony possesses complete knowledge of the outcome of the path, which occurs linearly before its execution. Since we see that the flow of consciousness from vessel to vessel, that is, the wave-like behavior represented by coherence in emotional coupling, subsists upon a hypothetical actualization of all probabilities, within that wave-like behavior, time parsimony incorporates those histories prospectively before execution of a given goal-oriented action. Thus, the original goal-oriented action, which may be spatial, is superseded hierarchically by time parsimony through the intervener. This intervener acts on complete hind knowledge, or foreknowledge of the fully actuated outcome of the execution. We see this in the following. If there are two paths, Path 1 which sees a given flow of consciousness through the vessel, and Path 2 which sees a distinct flow of consciousness through the vessel. Path 2 will be favored by the mirrored affirmation, emotional coupling, of the intervener represented by that hierarchical intervention. The measuring stick in this regard is the preservation of affirmation of a particular impulse, where the affirmation is ultimately a self-interaction of the waveform, self-affirmation, free of negation. This is with regards to the intervener acting on the observer, being the observer acting on himself with perfect self-consistent knowledge. Thus, emotional coupling, which is created by tautological flow, is receptive to foreknowledge held by a future self-observation. Thus, the intervention becomes an interaction with the agency of future self. Thus, we can say that the redirection of the flow of consciousness from vessel to vessel becomes a self-interaction preserving the coherence of that tautological flow. The higher objective, thus represented by the intervention, always thus tends towards a flow of that observer into a state of higher awareness, or complete knowledge of itself. The redirection represented by intervention, by time parsimony, is thus accretive to the expansiveness of the tautological flow. In other words, just as rivers of water flow along a gradient-forming pools, tautological flow tends towards aggregation and expansion of the borders within the vessel, being the boundaries of the pool. This occurs by way of the involvement of self-affirmation along a particular path corrected by the agency of future self. That's the end of the podcast for today.